this is Chris from the Ticket Stub. You're listening to Lone Star Community Radio on 104.5 KCZW LP Conroe and 106.1 KZCC LP Conroe and worldwide on irlonestar.com.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you for tuning in to the Weekly Business Hour. This is Rick Schissler. I'm your host, and I'm also the founder of OneBestConsult.com. Well, at the Weekly Business Hour, this is the place, if you don't already know, where we get together and talk about business, in particular small business. We have listeners throughout the Montgomery County area and now throughout the world that listen on the internet each week to our program. And don't forget, our program is recorded, so a video podcast is available. It'll be posted on the following Wednesday, and you can access it at any time. Be posted here at the radio station, Lone Star Community Radio. That's irlonestar.com. Posted on our website, that's bestconsult.com. And on social media, our pages on Facebook, YouTube, etc. So it's out there for you to look, and hopefully you'll think about sharing it with a fellow business person. Well, I think we got a good show lined up for you. We're at the end of our series. This will be part 4 of our series of conversations with Tom Jordan about having the most successful exit you can, or how to exit your business successfully. And the whole key is preparation, along with some other things. Tom is an expert. He has provided advice. We've had a lot of folks comment about it and ask questions. So I encourage you to stick around and listen to Tom Jordan finish up our conversation about how to exit your business successfully. The other thing, an encouragement. Usually it's a question. Here's an encouragement. Ask everyone you meet today how they're doing. Make it a point to ask people, how are you doing? Whether it be a customer, an employee, or someone you just bump into at lunch. How are you doing? The answer sometimes will surprise you, and particularly if you could strike up a conversation with someone and build a stronger relationship with them and your business. So ask, how are you doing? And so now sit back and listen to part 4 of our conversation, soup to nuts conversation with Tom Jordan, how to successfully exit your business. Well, good morning, Tom. Good to see you again.
Morning.
We're out in the field today, so to speak, ladies and gentlemen, and we're visiting with Tom Jordan. This is the 4th in a soup to nuts series that we've been talking about exiting your business on your terms. Tom, it's been a great journey. You've really taken us step by step and given us a lot of information. I tell you, the most amazing thing that I've learned out of this, there are a lot of moving parts if someone wants to do this right.
Yeah, you're right, Rick. And you know, it's one of the principles that we preach at our firm is you've got to be holistic in the view of the exit process, and there are so many moving parts. And you remember the flow sheet we looked at a couple of weeks ago. You could see how many different advisors need to be involved in the process. And really the message to an owner is start early. Even if you're not even remotely thinking of the exit in a real concrete way, start thinking about components of it and what that would look like.
You know, it's almost like, and you know my feelings on this, I believe, if possible, when someone is sitting around initially putting a business idea together and putting some kind of plan together to start a business, that one of the steps they need to take is to start down the exit road strategy road, maybe not in the depth that we've been talking about, because I believe you either make or leave money on the table when you make those basic major decisions as you build your business when it comes to the exit. I mean, folks have got to start the checklist that, or if you will, that you have up on the screen for us about asking, are we really ready for the transition? This comes further down the road, doesn't it? I mean, when you're really getting to that point.
Yeah, it really does. And this is sort of the beginning checklist of the launch pad. And this could be, a couple of weeks, or this could be literally months in planning. But we always want to know, are you ready to really do this? And one of the things I found with owners who are kind of getting ready for the next season in their life and looking at this transition of their business. So a lot of emotion involved in this. And so what we try and do is really keep them focused on the key elements of what's really needed to be ready and in answering that question. So you can see here, I took this from the Exit Planning Institute, which is the leading organization of thought leadership in the exit planning industry. And I'm the South Texas chapter president for EPI, and they've got so much information to share. And this little checklist is really important. So I'm going to go through this and just make some comments. And Rick, please feel free to stop me at any one of these, and we can have a little bit more of a conversation. But, you know, have you spent some time and money educating yourself on the process of how to transition? I'm amazed at how little owners really know of or understand the spectrum of exit and transition options that they have available to them. So an education process, I think, is really important. And you can do that literally years before you start. Next one is your personal, financial, and your business goals, are they aligned? Meaning are they defined, and are they codependent, and are they linked? You know, last week we talked about the value gap and the wealth gap. And these are the kind of things that we want to make sure that all systems are on the same page, both from your personal financial picture as well as your business. This next one is really important. Part of my training as an exit planner is working and gathering the other advisors that are necessary to successfully complete and launch your exit plan. Your attorney, your wealth advisor, your CPA, your spouse, of course. And if there are any other specific people involved, your banker, your merger and acquisition, your attorney, your estate planning attorney, tax specialist, your insurance specialist, if you're involved in any foundation or charity work. I mean, it just goes on and on and on. And my job is to really coordinate what all of these people do and how they do it on behalf of the owner, because that's who my client is to get this exit plan, this blueprint prepared.
You know,
contingency planning, big
Tom,
deal. Go ahead.
Real quick, which you gave me an open to do that. You back up to that second one real quick. This is one that I think folks, you know, rush through, that your personal financial business goals are aligned. And this is where I personally, in the experience I've had with helping people exit their business, a lot of folks stumble because they've been operating their business, and it is in some cases been a piggy bank for them and their families. And when they stop and say, okay, what are our goals for this, this, and this, they always either come up confused or they're short. I've never seen someone come up with more than enough funds, so to speak, that will be able to fund their personal goals and so on and so forth. And it's just kind of interesting that folks a lot of times are ill prepared. They just really haven't done a good job in this area at all.
Yeah, you're correct, Rick. And you know, this next area on this contingency planning issue, boy, this is a big one. Buy-sell agreements are so often undated. Frankly, some of them we found that are not even signed. They're not executed. Is the appropriate amount of insurance evaluated and properly owned and designated in the proper beneficiary structure, whether it's trust or other? I was on the phone this morning with a client of mine out of Chicago, and his valuation of his company is like $25 million. And his buy-sell agreement that he had done over 15 years ago has a specific dollar amount of $2 million in the transaction. You know, these are the kind of things we run into every day. And so it's important for everybody to really keep things updated And that's one of the roles that I can play on behalf of, what you're doing. The next area is, do you have a plan? Have you done some strategy analysis? What about your business valuation? Is it certified? Do you have a rule of thumb? We do certified valuations in my firm. And there's a very big difference between sort of a rule of thumb and a certified valuation. You got to know what you're working with. And you've got to know the strategy, the exit strategy that's going to best complement your valuation. And that's a critical piece of this. Looking in the deal structure, selling your company is fine, but I tell you, it's all in the details. It's not the amount that you get, it's how you get it. I've seen so many sales where it's a $5 million sale, but 3 of it is in an earnout and a holdback. So you really have to understand that the real issue is not so much in the sale price, even though that's important, but it is in the details on how that transaction is to play out. And the next area is, really, how's your transition team? Who on your staff, who in your business is really going to be close to you and making sure that all this stuff is done? And we're going to talk a little bit more about that in our upcoming segments here in a moment, but very important part. And, one of the areas also is, what do you plan on doing after you sell the business? We call it life after business. And we think that planning process is just as important as the planning of the transition of your business. And that we find there are a lot of gaping holes in this particular area from an estate planning perspective, from an insurance and tax perspective, a charitable outlook opportunity, and also hobbies and things that you may be interested in. Do you have a transition value enhancement? Have you done the due diligence? Have you prepared well for the maximum value of your business? Can you bring your multiple of EBITDA, for example, from 3 to 5 or from 4 to 7? That's a very critical part of this whole process. And then, of course, what kind of scenario do you have your management team underway to make sure that the post-transition leadership is in place, they're well incented, and we'll talk a little bit later about that in just a second, and what that transition looks like. So these are some of the considerations that I would share with you on how you begin this process.
One of the things that, as we go through this list, which is, in my opinion, extremely thorough, is what kind of pushback do you get and how do you address it? I mean, when you walk me through these steps, which I believe are all necessary, and I'm a business owner and I'm sitting there, I've got to scratch my head or say, wow, why do I need to go through all of this and be a little bit, maybe I'm overwhelmed, whatnot. How do you address that when you're talking to people?
Well, you take little bites of the process. Yes, it is overwhelming when you're sitting here looking at it all listed out. There's no question about that. And a lot of owners will just basically retreat. And one of the biggest problems that owners have in the markets that we work with is inaction. They just see how overwhelming it is. The emotional part of it becomes almost debilitating in terms of making decisions and going forward. And then I think, some of the other pushback we get is particularly in the family scenario, where we have internal transfers to family and or key people or both. We get a lot of pushback from what I would call the minor members in this equation, particularly with children. So we really have, the pushbacks can come from all sorts of directions. But I think once the owner is steadfast that they really need to go through this process and work with us, and as well as the other advisors, it becomes, it gets a little easier and a little bit more focused in terms of what the ultimate objective is.
Yeah, I sense that in my case, if I was working through this or working with someone through this, a comfort level would be reached in the idea that, hey, we're dealing with probably the biggest asset that I have in my life, and now we're going to take care of it and do the very best to transition, to sell it, whatever, transfer it. It's a wonderful way, and I think a very thorough way that'll give you the most success, I like to say, out of what you're doing. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we are, believe it or not, we're already to our first break in today's part 4 presentation. So we're going to take a short break. Hope you'll stay with us. When we come back, we're going to continue down the road of bringing this all together for you. And Tom, you've done a great job so far. So folks, stick around and we'll be right back with you.
From the beginning, the main purpose of the Cooperative Extension Service has been to change human behavior by teaching people how to apply the results of scientific research. By utilizing a holistic, multi-level approach, Extension family and community health programs encourage health and well-being for everyone. Addressing values, concerns, and needs with reliable science-based information, Extension programs help people lead healthier lives. We are Texas A&M AgriLife Extension, helping Texans make their lives better.
The Texas A&M AgriLife Extension Service has been dedicated to educating Texans for over a century. In 1915, the Extension program was established under the federal Smith-Lever Act to deliver university knowledge and agricultural research findings directly to the people. Ever since, AgriLife Extension programs have addressed the emerging issues of the day, serving diverse populations across the state. Texans turn to Extension for solutions in horticulture, agriculture, 4-H and youth, and family and consumer sciences. Extension agents respond not only with answers, but also with resources and services that result in significant returns on investment to boost the economy. Join us Fridays at 1 o'clock for the AgriLife Extension Hour.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, you're watching and listening to part 4 in a soup to nuts conversation entitled Exit from Your Business on Your Terms. And our very special guest and the one who's leading us through this conversation, Mr. Tom Jordan. Well, Tom, now's the real question. Do you keep it or do you sell it? Everybody's got to walk up to the line and make that decision. Teach us, how do you go about helping people make that decision?
Well, it's an important juncture point in the process for sure. Now, we have keep or sell tests through the entire process. When we meet a business owner, when we're 3 months into the engagement, 6 months, a year or 2, we are always asking, have you changed your mind? Do you want to keep the business, or are you really ready to sell? I tell you, it's not uncommon when an owner begins to get clarity in this process and they start looking at the value enhancements that they can do in their business, and all of a sudden they come back to life. They're not tired anymore. They're not burned out anymore. They see, they see some real opportunity to grow the business, from 1 to 1.5 million of EBITDA, and they're charged up all of a sudden. So, we are always asking, do you keep or do you sell? And that becomes almost a backdrop question that we ask all the time to make sure that we stay on the road of clarity. So what I want to share with you today are just some of the questions that we ask in this process. Have you had your company valued recently? I mentioned earlier the certified valuation process. That's critical. We've got to know, and you need to know, what you're really dealing with in terms of value. I know that George is a good friend of yours at the club, and he sold his business for X, but that doesn't mean you are. You've got to have a critical third-party objective process that puts a stamp of value on your business that is upheld in any litigation, in any potential divorce situation, and also any partner dispute situation, and then of course the IRS. So the certification of your value is, I think, a very important piece, and you can learn a lot more about that on my website. Next thing we look at is, have you and your financial advisor determined how much money you would need to invest to support your current lifestyle? We work with advisors, financial advisors, all the time. And we also provide financial advisory services if our owners don't have a relationship with someone who's competent in that area. But I think it's commonsensical. When we're dealing with all the chips in your life, some of those chips are going to be personal chips. And all of those need to be considered in your overall transition. Third is, are you able to take a vacation and not call the office for a week or more at a time? This is a great question, because we have owners that suffer from owner centricity. And essentially what that means is that you're too involved in every aspect of your business. And because of that, the value of your business will be less. It will decline over time. We actually have a quiz that we have an owner go through to measure the level of owner centricity that they have in their business. And then we can advise you on what to do in terms of delegation, staffing, technology, and so on. Next one is, what is the primary source of new business for your company? In other words, is it you? Are you the one that is bringing in all the business? Or is your company very focused on a few number of customers, and all of those relationships were brought in by you and managed by you? Got to look at that. You got to see whether or not that's going to really impact your value and your strategy. Next one is, what has been the trend for your revenues and profits over the last 5 years? If I'm looking at your business, I'm going to look at trends. I'm going to look at financials over a long period of time, at least 3 years, maybe even more. So I want to know what direction you've created this business to be in if I'm looking at buying it. Next one is, do you have a specific plan regarding what you would like to do after you sold your business? We talked about that a few moments ago. That life after business is huge from a psychological perspective. The Exit Planning Institute does a lot of research on the owner mindset. And what we found at the Institute is a very large number of business owners, when they're surveyed and the research is done 1 year after the transition, there is a large number of them that aren't overly excited. In other words, you kind of go, well, wait a minute, you've planned for 5 years to exit your business. It's a successful transition, and a year later, you're miserable. What's up? And what we have found is that many of those people who are miserable and unhappy, they didn't do the life after business planning to the extent they should have. Do your top 5.
I'm sorry,
go ahead, Ray.
I've got a question here, because if I could, it's interesting to me, life after business, great way to say it. But I find that, or do you find, I should say, excuse me, do you find that the folks, when you're dealing with someone who's done a good job in that area, in other words, is excited about the next chapter of their life, are they a better client? In other words, are they going to be on top of this process because they've already made the decision where they're going, versus, hey, I'm going to dedicate myself to the process, but like you say, a year later, I'm lost. And we've all seen that. I mean, I get that, but isn't that commitment very important to what this process does? Very important that I've got at least some vision of what my next step is.
It's huge. It's huge. I think it makes all the difference in the world. When you got a plan, even post sale, you're going to be much better off, much more ready psychologically for that next season in your life. And you will have had made so many smaller decisions up to the point of transition that will have been shaped by your vision and your life after business plan. So, well, have you identified which exit option is the most appropriate for you? We've talked more about that. Do you know how much you would net from the sale of your business after taxes and transaction fees? Boy, this is a big one, Rick. Everybody focuses on that top line. Hey, I sold it for $5 million. And then by the time it's done and without any proper planning, and they got hit by Uncle Sam in a way that they could have avoided or reduced, that plays into a lot of the pain in that post-transition life. Or do you have job descriptions for each of your key employees? Very important. Everybody has to know what their role is as you go through the transition and then as you actually do it. If you don't, that will create chaos, that will create uncertainty, and you will increase the danger of flight risk of your key people. And if your key people are being looked at as part of the valuation in a sale, that could be a big problem for you. And have you documented your systems, your marketing process? Is your technology up to date? And do you have audited financials that a third party could review and certainly understand? These are all questions I think that are addressed in this process. And finally, how's your health? Seriously, how is your health? How are you feeling? Do you have issues, or even with your spouse, health issues that are really potentially going to change what sort of process and transition you're going to take a look at? How's your energy level? Are you really burned out? Are you jazzed up about coming to work? Or do you just feel like you're babysitting the business? You're the caretaker. And have you set a date for when you would like to retire? Again, I've said this in all of our segments in this series. Most owners don't go to work on Friday and exit on Monday. They have a plan, and that plan is in a transition. So we see a lot of owners who get their plan and they step back from the business partially for a year or two, and then they step back a little bit more, and then they finally exit. So what's your plan? And then what about your industry? Are you in a growth mode? Are you shrinking? I mean, if you were a Blockbuster franchisee 20 years ago, where would you be today? And that's a silly example, and I know everybody uses that, but I think all of us on this call and this show could come up with 3 or 4 examples of changes in technology, changes in consumer trends, changes in competition. I've worked with independent, for example, pet store owners that were flourishing in smaller communities, and all of a sudden, you know who moves in? The PetSmart or the Petco. I mean, they're within 10 miles, and all of a sudden, revenues just drop like a rock. So these are things that really need to be looked at. So, Rick, any questions on this whole process of keeping or selling?
Well, to kind of work from the bottom up of the list, I think this industry issue is growing in importance. I mean, it's obviously to me, a building block, if you will, of a business, whether you're going to continue to operate the business or sell the business, and potential buyers are going to be looking at it. But things move so rapidly today, and they've always moved rapidly, but now we have communication systems and whatnot that help that along and make that possible. what do you see today when you talk to businesses about the forecast, say over the next 5-10 years? I don't know how far do you try to forecast out of that industry question?
Well, we take trend data from the last 3 years and then forecast that in our models. And our access to the research and data is pretty extensive, and we can really drill down not only to the very specific style and type of business, but also regional fluctuations in that, and we can get a pretty good feel for that. And unless it's a local buyer who is not overly sophisticated in this, usually a potential buyer is going to already have that stuff, in their suitcase. They're going to know. They're going to know what the potential is and what the opportunities are.
Yeah, it's something that when I look at opportunities, not in the depth that you do, but working with clients, it becomes a red flag issue, and I just keep seeing it more and more, and it's very interesting. But let me ask you this, in going back up the list, so to speak, documented processes, job descriptions, these are things that a well-run business is going to have. How often do you find businesses where they haven't documented job descriptions, processes, so on and so forth? How often do you really run into that?
Surprisingly, quite a bit, especially as the business gets larger. When we see more than 20, 25 employees, or maybe that plus multiple locations that the business is being operated out of, they typically will come to a point where they have documented and they have upgraded and they have, professional focus on the HR functions of a business and all of the regulatory issues. But the smaller the company, the more we see that needs to be shored up. It needs to be cleaned up. It needs to be brought current. And so there really isn't a rule of thumb other than smaller businesses will tend to be a little bit more lackadaisical about these kinds of things.
Yeah, I don't disagree. It's just, best run businesses, best practices, you're going to find this is one of the key elements of a really well-run small business, big business, so on and so forth. Well, Tom, thank you again. This segment has been very interesting, very enlightening. Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to take our bottom of the hour break, and then we're going to come back for our final segment in part 4 of our Soup to Nuts conversation with Mr. Tom Jordan. So I hope you'll stay with us. We'll be right back with you.
You're going to need me.
You're going to need us.
All of us.
You're going to need our help with your water, your air, your food.
You're going to need our determination, our compassion.
You're going to need the next generation of leaders to face the challenges the future will bring.
And we promise we'll be there when you need us.
Today, 4-H is growing the next generation of leaders.
Hey y'all, it's DJ Mike from Dance Time in Texas. Join me Monday through Friday at 8 a.m. as I count down the top 10 Texas Red Dirt songs that are packing the dance floors. I'll be featuring local artists and the story behind the hits, shows in the area, as well as new songs that make you want to dance. It's Dance Time in Texas with DJ Mike on Lone Star Community Radio, 104.5 KCZW and 106.1 KZCC, Conroe, Texas, or online, irlonestar.com.
Well, welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. This is, again, the final segment, part 4 of the conversation, Soup to Nuts. It's been a very interesting conversation. I hope you have found it as such. And if you haven't watched all 4 parts, I encourage you to do so, because I think every step of the way, this has been informative, whether you're considering exiting your business next week, next year, or 20 years from now. It's all about planning. And Tom Jordan has been our leader and walked us through this process. And so, Tom, how do we wind it up?
Well, I think what we'll do here is maybe go back through and let me share suggestions with you as an owner who's listened to part or all of the series that we've put together, and just kind of talk to you a little bit about what we see, give you a sense of comparison, and give you a sense of proportionality in how you might want to go about this. So we're going to go through 14 planning suggestions. And these suggestions really tend to cover a lot of the waterfront of the work that we end up doing with our owner clients to help them get things shored up to enhance value, transferable value, and then ultimately make a successful exit. So the first one is understanding your options. As I said earlier, some of these are going to be repetitive from what we've talked about, but you've got to know what's the best way for you to sell your business. Now, what we find here is very interesting. Our research supports this each and every year. Most owners, when they begin this process, they see themselves as selling to a third party. And if you recall in the first segment, what's happening is that we have the baby boomer tsunami. And if you recall, what we're seeing is a supply and demand issue for this tsunami of baby boomer owners who want to sell to a third party, but the buying opportunities are shrinking for a lot of demographic and psychosociological demographics, and that's happening. So you may start with the idea that you are going to sell to a third party for a check and you're out of there. What ends up happening is as you go through the process that we've described today and also over the last couple of weeks in our segments, you might change your mind or might have to. You might have to look at a generational transfer. Will there be a leverage recapitalization? Is there a third party management team that you need to look at? Is there private equity opportunities to restructure and exit over a set period of time? A managed buyout, an ESOP, or is your business as such that your best opportunity is to have a controlled and very successful liquidation? So these are things you need to know. You need to know your options. The second one is the continuity, the business succession instructions. What key employees can and should be given the responsibility to continue to run the business and or make financial decisions? Who should oversee internal administration? You need to know these things. What advisors and others, such as family members and friends, should be consulted in the ownership transfer process? And what do you want done with the business when you die? You may want the business sold to a key employee, continued in the family, or liquidated. If you want it to be sold, to whom and on what terms? Business owners should make a list of names and contacts of businesses that have expressed an interest in acquiring the company or that you think would be appropriate successor owners. Whatever you do, you should make these decisions during your lifetime. Very critical. And I've seen real heartaches occur because owners have not taken the time to make sure their succession plans and that's their short-term and their long-term succession plans. If something happens to them, can impact that sale. The third one is be in control of your destiny. The following factors all impact whether or not it is a good time to exit or not. What are the market conditions? What's your health like? Do you have an unsolicited offer from a competitor just out of the blue? Happens all the time. Death of a family member or a partner. winning or losing a major contract or customer. Be prepared to capitalize on these factors rather than react to them. Plan for a rainy day. What would you do if you lost a major customer? You have a plan. I throw in there today, what would you do if we were hit by a major pandemic? What would you do if your partner were hit by a bus? What would you do if your children announced they did not want to run the family business, especially since you've been counting on them for the last 10 or 15 years to do so? What would you do if you were diagnosed with a terminal illness or a debilitating illness that really kept you either out of the business or severely neutralized in your impact? So the continuity bonus scenario, have you thought about that? To retain key employees after your death, offer them ownership, perhaps via a buy-sell agreement, or offer them additional compensation if they continue to run the company. I'll tell you, as a third-party owner, if you have those plans in place, as someone looking at your business objectively, I'm going to be more impressed with you, and I'm going to be very comfortable offering you a higher multiple than if you had not done any of this planning.
That's one of the things, and I really, that's the underlying theme of this entire conversation is planning. And typically small business owners, particularly the smaller with the, say 1 to 50 employees, they're not excited about a lot of planning. And how do you get these folks, how do you get me motivated to get on track? I'm all in, I want to exit, I want to build a strategy over a period of say 3 to 5 years. I've got all that done. But how do you get me motivated and keep me motivated to continue to walk through the planning and the execution of this plan?
Yeah, I think it's a matter of keeping you focused and always painting the picture of what the end result needs and should look like. Exit planning is really nothing more than good business planning with an end date in mind. Think about that statement for a second. It's just good business strategy, but it has a date stamp on it. And that's what we try and really encourage our clients to understand and to work with. And some will stay on it, some will kind of wane off and not get the data we need as we go through an engagement. But we're pretty good with owners and working with them in their own schedules and in their own timelines to make sure this stuff gets done in a reasonable amount of time. And that leads me right into the next two, and that's assembling a team of advisors. No single professional has all the skills necessary to help you develop and implement your plan. So we've got to have the right people on the bus on your behalf. And then do you work on your business on a regular basis, not just working in it? What I have found after doing this for so many years, the more successful businesses and business owners tend to have a scheduled time that they work on their business. Some of them do it weekly, some of them do it monthly, some of them do it even quarterly, but schedule time away from your business. If it's weekly, take an afternoon off and do it religiously. Go away from all the problems and all the challenges at work and think about your business. Relax, do it. Take a day a month, or take 2 days a quarter to do that. And you will be amazed at how much more focused and how much more clarity you bring to the table as it results, as it involves these kinds of things. And there are all sorts of mastermind and CEO roundtables. We have a roundtable structure at our own company through an organization, but every community's got them. Some of them are doing national virtuals now because of the changing technology that can connect people literally coast to coast. But focus on your business, not just in it.
You know,
Preserve wealth. Go
that's
ahead, Rick.
good advice about the roundtable. And I have to hold my hand up literally. I actually mentor a CEO roundtable here in the greater Houston area, along with a number of my fellow Silver Fox advisors. I have benefited from roundtables as I built my businesses, different kinds of roundtables, local, national, and actually North American in one case. I just got to put a plug in, Tom. I encourage.
Yeah, sure.
I
Yeah,
encourage
and
people
absolutely.
connect
I'm very
with
familiar.
roundtables. It's just so much. It made a huge difference in what I was able to accomplish. We've got a couple minutes left, and we got quite a few of these to get through. So let's get back to it.
All right, I'm gonna run through these. Preserve wealth. Don't give it to Uncle Sam. That's straightforward stuff. We understand that. Have a good CPA that is not just a tax historian and prepares your returns and your financials, but have a CPA that has vision and that can help you make decisions about the direction you might want to go. Looking at your status, your corporate status, are there advantages in switching to S Corp or back to C Corp from an S Corp? So these are things that you need to really look at and understand. Someone who has a background in estate planning that can really help you in the long plan financially in pretty good shape. I mentioned business valuation, very important. Make sure it's certified. Get your financials audited. They will pay for themselves. I promise you. And if you're having a third party look at your business. And then I think finally, begin kind of a drawer or a box or a file on all things exit planning. That's articles that you can read. These are tests and assessments that you can take. These are maybe seminars and podcasts that you can start listening to. There's a huge offering out there through social media on learning and understanding the exit planning process. And I would encourage you to kind of form your own little box of good stuff.
Well, you know, all of this is really, really important. A lot of material. I encourage people to review and perhaps listen again. I encourage you to go to the website. And I need to take a second, Tom. What words of wisdom can we kind of wrap this up with here at the end of our soup to nuts conversation?
Well, I think start earlier than you think you should. To understand that how you look at your business and how a potential buyer looks at your business is going to be different. And you need to come to terms with that. And frankly, someone objectively looking at your business is not going to think your business is worth more than you think it is. It's going to be probably less, and you need to be aware of that. I think clear the decks as far as if you have children in the business, you need to kind of get a good handle on whether or not any of your kids are really interested in succeeding in the business, and really secondarily, are they competent? Can they take this business and do well? And listen, that's a big deal for you because 80-90% of the transitions to children are based on seller financing notes, and banks are going to help you a little bit, but you're going to be putting yourself in position of being a creditor with your kids. And if they can't run that business like you have run it, you could be in some real deep waters there. But I think usually just talk about this. Give us a call. ExoduComplink.com. We have a lot of information on valuation, on exit planning. We have a number of articles. We blog all the time. We have assessments that are available to you. They're free, they're non-invasive, they're easy to take online. And we certainly would love to talk to you about how we can address your immediate questions and then help you maybe get a sense of what your exit process should look like.
Well, Tom, I can't thank you enough. Great presentation. Again, lots of material, lots of in-depth thinking, and I appreciate your advice. Start early. And it doesn't mean it's because of the volume of information. I just think there's so much money left on the table if you don't do that. Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to take a break. This is the conclusion of a 4-part series. So make sure you get a chance, if you haven't, look at part 1, 2, 3, and 4. All of these will be posted on our weekly business hour page as they're broadcast live this next month. We will be posting them there, and you can listen to them at your leisure. Thank you again, Tom Jordan, ExoduComplink. I mean, you guys do a great job, so I wish you much success in the future.
Thanks, Rick. Thank you very much. Enjoyed being here.
Do you want to know what's going on in Conroe? Tune in to Keeping Up with Conroe. Keeping Up with Conroe will highlight upcoming events and local businesses in the area. Keeping Up with Conroe will air the second Tuesday of every month at 11 a.m. and will be hosted by the Conroe CVB staff. Keeping Up with Conroe will highlight Conroe's amazing attractions for residents and visitors. So tune in to Keeping Up with Conroe and join the staff of the Conroe CVB every month on Lone Star Community Radio. For more information about Keeping Up with Conroe and the Conroe CVB, go to visitconroe.com.
Lone Star Boxer Rescue is a nonprofit organization serving Montgomery County and surrounding areas, dedicated to the health and well-being of the boxer breed. Lone Star Boxer Rescue is run and managed 100% by volunteers since 1999. Our main objective is to rescue, rehabilitate, and rehome boxers that come to us from many sources, including local animal shelters, owner surrenders, and strays. For more information about Lone Star Boxer Rescue, visit our website at lsbr.org.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for joining us this week. I hope you enjoyed that part 4 of our interview, Soup to Nuts conversation with Tom Jordan. And I hope that you will make plans to join us again next week, 11 a.m., Monday morning. We're here, right here on Lone Star Community Radio. And in the meantime, I encourage you, work in your business, stay focused on what's important for your business. That, to me, is the key to success. Lots of great ideas out there, lots of things that get rich quick, all kinds of ideas. But the key, I believe, to success is staying focused on what is important for your business. So until next week, thank you, and we look forward to seeing and hearing from you next Monday at 11 a.m. Thanks.